Hi, okay, so as kind of a continuation of what we did today in class, I'm going to show you the same problem worked out several different ways, just to kind of give you an idea of maybe when to pick which method, why to pick the method, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's talk about, hold on, I have it written down up here. Okay, let's talk about the quadratic x squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Okay, it's been a while since we talked about graphing, but let's go ahead and graph this one just so you get a kind of a refresher on how to do that. So if you remember, the first thing we need to do is we're trying to find the vertex. Okay, so to find the vertex, step 1 is to find the axis of symmetry. And the x value is going to be negative b over 2 times a. So here, negative 2 is 2 over 2 times a. Okay, so 2 times 1. So 2 over 2 is 1. So that means that the axis of symmetry is going to have, or the vertex is going to have a x value of 1, so the axis of symmetry is going to be 1. And so step 2 of finding the vertex is figuring out what the y is. So to do that, what we're going to do is use this original equation, but we're going to plug 1 in for x. So 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 15. So that's 1 minus 2 minus 15. So 1 minus 2 is negative 1, and then subtract 15 more is negative 16. So this is going to have a vertex, of 1, negative 16. So down here on my graph, okay, let's see. I'm going to make this, okay, my x-axis, and I'm going to make, I'm trying to think, I'm going to make this my y. Okay, so we can kind of fit all that in the screen. Okay, so I just found my axis of symmetry was on 1. Okay, up here, my axis of symmetry was on x is 1. So here on x is 1, this is the middle of my parabola. And then the vertex, which we found right here, is at 1, negative 16. So 1, I think I made this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Perfect. Okay, so that's 1, negative 16. That's my vertex. So to figure out the next points in the parabola, I'm going to pick one to the right of my axis of symmetry. So that has an x value of 2. So I'm going to plug a 2 into my equation. 2 squared minus 2 times 2 minus 15. Okay, I'll spare you all the math details on that, but when I work it out, it's 4 minus 4 is 0, minus 15 is negative 15. Okay, so that gives me the point 2, negative 15. So 2, and then down to 15. So this is 1 to the right. So because this is the axis of symmetry, right, symmetry means the same on both sides, so I'm going to go 1 to the left. Okay, and that's the beginning of my parabola. So now I could go 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the next space over is 3. I could even plug in negative 1. I'm going to plug in 3 just because I think it's easier with positives. So 3 squared minus 2 times 3 minus 15 equals, okay, it ends up being negative 12. It's 9 minus 6, and then 9 minus 6 is 3, and then 3 minus 15 is negative 12. So that gives me the point 3, negative 12. So 1, 2, 3, and then this one was negative 10, 11, 12. Okay, so 2 to the right is at negative 12. So 2 to the left of my axis of symmetry has to be negative 12. Okay, so it's starting. Okay, but I'm trying to solve, so I want to know where it crosses the x-axis. So I plugged in 3. I'm going to go one more. I'm going to plug in 4. 4 squared minus 2 times 4 minus 15. So 16 minus 8 is 8. 8 minus 15 is negative 7. So 4, negative 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay, so again, I'm 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right from my axis of symmetry. So I can go 1, 2, 3 spaces to the left. Okay, so my parabola is growing, but oops. Okay, but it's not at the x-axis yet. So I'm going to try one more. So I started right on my axis of symmetry was 1, then I plugged in 2, 3, 4, so 5 squared minus 2 times 5 minus 15. So 5 squared is 25, minus 10 is 15, minus 15 is 0. So that gives me the point 50. So this is what I've been looking for. So 50. So 1, 2, 3, 4 units away, spaces away from my axis of symmetry it crossed. So 1, 2, 3, 4 units away on the left. So it crossed at 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And negative 1, 2, 3. Okay, so those are my two solutions. So when I solved this by graphing, I got x equals 5 or negative 3. Okay, so graphing is probably the longest method, but it's done. Okay, so x squared minus 2x minus 15, I got 5 or negative 3. So what we're going to do is now we're going to do the same quadratic. X squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Okay, another way to do these is by factoring. So I want to see if I can factor this. So I'm going to think about it. I'm going to set up my two parentheses. Okay, there's nothing they're all divisible by. To make x squared, I do x times x. This is a minus, which means a plus and a minus. Okay, and then what can I multiply together to make negative 15 that adds to negative 2? Negative 5 plus 3. And if you guys remember from last chapter, the way I check this, that's negative 5x plus 3x. Negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. So I know it's factored correctly. So because it's factored correctly, I can set each of these equal to 0. So subtract 3, x equals negative 3. Add 5, x equals 5. So I got negative 3 and 5, which is the exact same thing I got over here when I graphed. Okay, so same quadratic, just done a different way. So let's do the same one by completing the square. Complete the square. So it's not a trinomial square because this is not a perfect square. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. So that leaves me with x squared minus 2x equals 15. Okay, but to complete the square, I have to figure out what number can I put in this little blank to make it a perfect square trinomial. That's c, and whatever I put over here, I have to put over here. So to do this, you do b over 2 squared. So our b term is negative 2 over 2 squared. So negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is just 1. So that's going to go in both of those blanks. So I'm going to put a 1 here and a 1 here. So what I have is x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 16. So the whole point in completing the square with making this perfect is so that I can factor it into x minus 1 squared equals 16. Because if I can get just a square root, then I can take the square root of both sides. Okay, so, and if you're forgetting how I did this, go back and watch the trinomial square or completing the square video. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So the square root of x minus 1 squared is just x minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 16. Okay, well 16 is a perfect square. So I should know, what I was going to say is we can go ahead and add 1 to both sides. So now I have x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 16. And I know the square root of 16 is 4. So 1 plus or minus 4. So if I did 1 plus 4, that's 5. If I did 1 minus 4, that's negative 3. So look, again, it's 5 or negative 3, which is exactly what we got here when we factored and here when we graphed. Okay, so just in case you're not sick of that same trinomial, let's do it again. X squared minus 2x minus 15 equals 0. This time we're going to use the quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to plug in. This is like a 1 for a, negative 2 is b, negative 15 is c. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c is negative 15 all over 2 times 1. Okay, so I plugged in a, b, and c. So x equals 2 plus or minus the square root. Negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times 1 is 4 times negative 15 is negative 60 all over 2. Okay, so I think you can probably see where this is going. This becomes plus a positive. So now I have x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 64 over 2. And the square root of 64 is 8. So x equals 2 plus or minus 8 over 2. Okay, and the fraction bar is a grouping symbol. So you always do what's on top first and then divide. So I can do 2 plus 8 over 2. So that's 10 over 2, which is 5. Or I can do 2 minus 8 over 2. 2 minus 8 is negative 6 over 2 is negative 3. So it's the same answers that we've got every other time. Okay, so using the quadratic formula, using completing the square, graphing, and factoring, okay, all gave us the exact same answer. The only method that I didn't show you was solving using square roots, and I couldn't do that one because this had an x term. So you can solve using square roots if you can get it down into something like x squared equals 5, okay, or x squared equals 25. You can't do it if you have a middle x term.